Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room, an island show that endeavors to bring you issues that are commonly talked about around the water cooler or maybe over the fence in your backyard. We like to talk about things that are top of mind. I'm Robin Adair, and across our virtual fence on the Zoom platform is my partner in crime, the Croatian sensation himself, John Jurisic. And Johnny, as usual, lots going on.
Robin, you and I are constantly busy chatting, interviewing, reviewing, looking at various issues and deciding what shall we feature this week. We could talk about rising interest rates, housing shortages. We could talk about that again. We could talk about the doctor shortage. We could talk about downtown safety, hospital lineups again. And of course, we could still be discussing what seems to be potentially the most important activity locally, that being the seesaw battle in Saanich about dogs being allowed to go off leash in city parks.
Right. And Johnny, instead of all those exciting, enticing topics which we do cover and will be covering again, we thought that we would dip into another important issue. That is, of course, the issue, and the very serious one, of dangerous drugs and criminals not being held to account. It's wrecking our cities right across the province, right across the country. A lot of people are feeling very helpless because we don't have laws to deal with the criminals. We don't have facilities to help people who are mentally ill and who are struggling with drug addiction. In a few minutes, we'll be talking about the situation in Nanaimo, which really, I believe, encapsulates the problem that many places are dealing with. And we'll get to that shortly. But first of all, Johnny, let's take a look at the situation in Ukraine.
Robin, thousands of Ukrainian refugees are staying in BC right now. Quite a diaspora here, hoping this war with Russia will end soon and they can go home. Also, many folks on the island have strong connections to our armed forces and are more than interested in the status of Canadian troops stationed in, of all places, Latvia, ready to act if the Russians turn their guns on NATO. So this is serious stuff.
Very serious. And we're going to turn to somebody who I know knows a thing or two about this and many other issues around the military. Chris Kilford, a retired lieutenant colonel, and he's also the president of the Victoria branch of the Canadian International Council. Last year, he had an opportunity to go to Latvia. He met with the troops there. He had a chance to see the facilities. There's been a lot of talk about that Canadian group, and there's about 750 men and women serving in Latvia right now. They could be on the front line of a mess if Russia decided that they didn't like the fact that the Ukrainians were starting to march into southern Russia and started feeling that somehow NATO was a danger. Would they be tempted to go into former Soviet countries like Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia? Would they take that chance? And would Canadians find themselves in the middle of a mess? And we want to find out more about what Chris Kilford thinks about that and what he thinks about Canada's ongoing support for both the Ukrainian military and their civilian efforts. So is there a chance, do you think, that Canadians will be called upon to get involved in this current conflict with Russia? Are the Russians angry enough that they would cross a line with NATO?
Well, I'd say we are involved, of course, because we're providing training to the Ukrainian armed forces. We're providing lots of support in many other different ways. In terms of our troops in Latvia and what they may face, they would certainly be prepared. I mean, the Latvian government would be prepared if there was a Russian incursion. And of course, the Canadians would be there with the NATO battle group ready to respond. So it's always a possibility. I think the chances of it happening are quite low, but needless to say, you're always prepared for that sort of thing to happen.
Would you say that the Canadian forces, in fact, are in good shape if for some reason they are required?
I would say so. I happened to be there last summer in August. I was able to spend the whole day with our task force and the battle group. I got to see all of the equipment that they currently have in the battle group, and it's a multinational battle group. And I was very impressed. I came away thinking that if there was ever a problem in the area, in the region, in Latvia itself, if they were facing the Russians, they would be able to handle themselves incredibly well. Well, I think the blowing up of the dam does indicate the desperation that they certainly are showing us. And so then leads you to think that other cases, other situations could occur. And so you would have to be prepared for that. And I think the dam is just one indication that we should be prepared for the unexpected.
And do you expect Ukraine will prevail?
At the end of the day, I would say so. I think the initiative is with the Ukrainians. We're seeing that right now. The counteroffensive, for all intensive purposes, has begun.
Chris Kilford is just back from meeting in Ottawa. He's watching this conflict in Eastern Europe very carefully, and we'll have a full feature interview with him upcoming in July. He's a great guest of ours and great information on what's happening over there. We're so lucky to have such well-informed military minds living close by, Robin. But now it's time to swing our attention to another life-threatening situation. How many of these can there be in our community? Drug use and drug deaths.
It's a very, very big issue, and it touches almost every Canadian in some way, shape, or form, whether they feel threatened, whether they feel endangered, whether they have a family member who's directly impacted, somebody who's in the police, or somebody who's working as a social worker, or somebody who themselves is an addict or having struggles and living on the street. It's a terrible situation. And, every year in Nanaimo, the crime numbers are climbing. South Nanaimo is really the epicenter, but it's spread right over the city. It's downtown. And, they have now the safe supply of drugs. That's the big experiment in British Columbia, safe supply. So you don't have to go get street drugs. Hopefully it takes the numbers down in terms of people having terrible episodes with overdose. But the problem is, it doesn't seem like there's a lot less heroin and meth and other drugs on the street. There's more than ever. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't seem that it's making things any safer. It's not solving the issue. And, Mayor Leonard Krogh has said that he thinks something needs to be done. The Premier, David Eby, is saying more needs to be done. The federal government, they're busily talking about interference from Beijing. They don't seem to be focused on this, but they should be, because this catch and release is just not acceptable. There's a lot of problems at a lot of levels. We decided we'd talk to Collen Middleton from the Nanaimo and Area Safety Association to see what he thinks. Let's zoom him in. And now joining us in the Rumble Room for the first time is Collen Middleton from the Nanaimo Area Public Safety Association. Welcome, Collen.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Oh, great to have you here. Your organization advocates that every citizen has the right to peace, safety, security in their home, at their work, and in public places. Now, I can't imagine anybody, or any normal person, would disagree with any of that. And you're in a situation where in Nanaimo particularly, it's been getting worse and worse with severe crimes, 44% increase in severe crime in 2022 alone. So you must be very frustrated. Do you have a solution?
Yeah, I mean, it is frustrating. And, I say to really anybody that kind of criticizes the nature of our advocacy work that, look, like I think it's absurd that we even need to advocate for public safety. I mean, that should be the point of, why our governments have jobs, is so I think it illustrates, the how bad we've let it get in our society generally when it comes to how we treat one another, how we deal with, what is clearly a very severe mental health and addictions issue that we have in the province. We have a very severe housing and affordability issue in our province, and we have some critical issues with our ability to apply reasonableness in our judicial system, and we have a law enforcement system that is woefully under-resourced, and part of that is because nobody wants to be a police officer when they don't feel like they're going to be able to actually serve and protect.
So great to have a person who's trying to live and work in South Nanaimo. Actually, my son has an apartment in South Nanaimo. Oh, yeah. That area is often compared to downtown Victoria. So there is a lot of drugs and crime happening. It's a big deal in that area of Nanaimo. and likely misrepresenting the larger city. Nonetheless, politicians like Premier David Eby say the uptick in repeat violent offenses is completely unacceptable. And he announced Victoria and Nanaimo are getting new funding to become hubs targeting violent crime. Is this going to work? Is this a good idea?
Well, I mean, we definitely need it. And I'm not going to argue with more resources for policing, but really, I mean, the general consensus is that this isn't just a policing issue. I mean, certainly it's needed, but I mean, we have a situation where we have a $300 million a year illegal fentanyl industry, according to the Cullen Commission, that released their final report last year. And we have the issues with drug trafficking and drug related crimes is extremely concerning, and we do need, at the same time as getting people into the proper mental health and addictions treatment care, we also need to get people into affordable and safe housing, that where people aren't going to be preyed upon by street level drug dealers. And we also need people that are committing these what I would call heinous crimes, in terms of selling large quantities of deadly lethal drugs to people. A lot of the people that sell these drugs don't take them themselves. So it really is. I mean, we do have a very large societal scale issue on our hands, and we definitely need all the resources that we can muster at a societal scale to deal with it.
So you don't agree with the idea of safe supply the way it's being done now?
Well, I mean, it's unfortunately it's sort of like any half measure that our elected officials seem to be able to come up with is, we have this notion of a safe supply, which I would prefer to call publicly supplied addictive drugs, because safe supply of opioid medications are, the way that they're being administered is not safe. They're not being properly controlled. But I think that yes, safe supply is in terms of having these controlled doses of opioids are necessary for people as a I would call it an intervention to an otherwise catastrophic outcome, but it is not the be all and end all. And so, and I think, the NDP, in fairness, are trying to identify that. However, it seems to be that is what everybody is focusing on, and that's where all the money is going. Whereas we definitely need people to realize that these drugs are not safe. We need to get into our high schools and say, look, these, like, safe supply, call it whatever you want. Well, you shouldn't call it whatever you want. You shouldn't call it safe. Like, that's like the last thing you should really be calling it. It's a euphemism, a marketing term. And we need to be addressing the unintended consequences of safer supply, which is this diversion issue, which is fueling an opioid crisis.
Now we have in your mission statement, peace and security is high at the list, and what we are seeing right now across the province is a lot of people very upset because their parks have basically been taken over. There's tents, there's open drug use, some of it within just a few feet of schools, and children playing and swings and all sorts of things, and it's really difficult. The police, social workers, they try to intervene, they try to get in there, but we have a catch and release judicial system. So, what is the fair way to clean up this mess, starting in our parks, if you like? I mean, what would you like to see the authorities do with people that are addicts and living in tents and are out of control?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. And I mean, we could probably talk for hours just on this topic alone. I think that first and foremost, whether you're unhoused or housed, you should be able to walk around in a public park without fear of A, being violently assaulted, B, being mugged or having your stuff stolen from you, or C, inhaling secondhand crystal meth, crack, smoke. I mean, or actually fourth, having your children stumble upon contaminated drug paraphernalia that could very well be dangerous to a child's health or even lethal. So like those should be like that should be the bare minimum standard for any public space. And if we're not able to meet that, then it requires some kind of intervention and change. And so, a person's right to use drugs, and not just my opinion, the majority opinion, I would imagine, a person's right to use drugs ends when their right to use drugs infringes on our right, who is not using, to personal safety. It's like simple as that.
Wow. The frustration, I hear it. I feel it. It's rampant throughout our community, this frustration that nothing is changing. It crosses party lines.
Yeah.
Leonard Krogh was formerly an NDP MLA, now mayor of Nanaimo, has been very blunt in his assessment of the situation. He said there's a tide of human misery out there, and people don't want to see it anymore or be
Yeah.
impacted by it anymore.
Yeah.
Or municipalities pay for police, so we'll look at one sort of potential area of solution. But isn't really the province and the feds who need to change the law in order to really change all of this stuff in this terrible situation?
Yeah, I fully agree. And when I first started into this advocacy rabbit hole, just after the last municipal election, I was going after the city council, Mayor Krogh included, quite strongly, saying, you guys need to deal with this. This is your problems. And the more I learned, and the more that they, Mayor Krogh, tried to calm me down as well. You do ultimately realize that the city is outside. It is outside of their ability to control it. And as we, within our group, started to realize that as well, and started connecting with other groups that are experiencing the same issues across the province, that's when I would call this a grassroots movement has sort of started to take hold. And yes, like we do see this as primarily a provincial and federal issue. I mean, the reason why British Columbia is experiencing this so much more more directly or severely than other parts of the country is there's a number of factors there. One is the geography. There's a general migration from east to west when it comes to the ability to live outside unhoused year round. There's also the issue of where these drugs are coming from and the accessibility of the illicit drugs. So there's a financial or economic consideration where the drugs here in the lower mainland on the island are so much cheaper than they are in any other province. So it's sort of, so in order to combat it from this side of the Rocky Mountains, I think we need from the federal government a recognition that this problem needs to disproportionately high resources put towards it, because really, I mean, BC is welcoming a lot of people from other parts of the country that are experiencing homelessness, that are experiencing very severe mental health and addictions issues, and those people, their loved ones are back east. So there's a lot of things that need to happen, but really, I think at a societal scale, we really need to come to terms with the fact that, if we want a safe civil society, we can't have any form of publicly supported infrastructure or policy environment that allows for the profiting off of these addictive drugs. The issue of these safer supply programs and harm reduction supplies. Like there's some big money contracts going between the provincial and federal government to these private companies that are profiting from the sale of these supplies. And
So
so
you'd probably rather have some big money programs that went towards building new mental care hospitals and facilities, or facilities for addiction, so people just weren't left on the street, but there was actually places to place them where they can get help.
that's right. Yeah, like get people into the facilities. I mean, the number of treatment and detox beds that are available, and this is, again, I've just been learning this in the last 6 months. It's abhorrently low. I mean, we have a very, very dire situation in this province when it comes to public access to mental health and well-being care.
Great to hear from Collen Middleton. Sorry it has to be on that topic, but it's a topic that we all need to be thinking about.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous situation. It's not going to get better if we keep doing what we're doing. It's not enough. We need facilities. We need to help people with mental illness. There need to be beds for people with addictions. We can't simply say, here's some housing, go in there and good luck.
Yeah.
It's bad luck for all of us to continue doing this. We'll keep an eye on this issue. But on this happy note, this seems to be a very heavy show, but that's just the way it's working out, John, despite the fact it's summer and we should all be relaxing and going out and enjoying our lean-tos. But that's it. And we're on to now the wrap-up of this version of the Rumble Room.
Yeah, such an impactful message, Robin. Very passionate on your part. And actually, summer increases these problems, because folks from all over Canada are coming to our region of the world, and they're homeless, and they're bringing addiction and crime issues with them. So although we're enjoying the summer, other deep crises are deepening. Very passionate. Thank you for your thoughts. We believe this kind of information, you and I and others who watch, that this information is what people need to learn about, because knowledge is power, and the public needs to use its power to get politicians to change the laws and build a better, safer community. Okay? And so with that said, we hope you continue to watch our show and become more knowledgeable.
As we attempt to do the same. We're all trying to acquire knowledge and information, John.
Absolutely. And every show, I have to admit, I learn some more. That's part of the great thing about doing this show. I'm constantly learning. So it's a lot of fun. We really appreciate that now approximately 1.1 million people have watched our show, the Victoria Rumble Room, over the past 2+ years. If you want to follow us regularly, and I encourage you to do so that you can continue learning and having a bit of fun with us, here's what you can do. Facebook is the Heart and Soul. Twitter is the Heart and Soul Companion. YouTube is the Heart and Soul Inventory. We play around in Facebook news groups all the time. We're also on Instagram. We're also on TikTok. For now, enjoy your summer. Be careful. Be safe. Enjoy our beautiful island. That's what I'm going to be doing. I'm John Jurisic.
And no one can enjoy the sunshine more than you, John. And all of our viewers. And I say to that, I'm Robin Adair, and rumble on.